When I was young, I grew up in Southern California. I had my very best friend was a homeschooled family. And this was so I graduated from high school in 1995. And she had never been in public school before. From kindergarten, graduated to high school, she was homeschooled. And they always had these most fascinating times. They really kind of did more themed homeschooling. They had a lot of fun. Was she good at math? Oh, she was terrible at math. And I always kind of thought that was because she was homeschooled. And now that I have a daughter of my own, I realize that not everybody is good at math. But they were a phenomenal family. I never thought I would be a homeschool mom. I grew up in the school system, graduated from high school early myself, and thought that my kids would be in public schools. I started noticing my kids just not fitting into the school system, not really early on. Yeah, I guess it was. My daughter has a late birthday. It's November, and we try to put her into kindergarten with kids kind of her age, and the school would not allow it. They said, she's just too young. It's not good. It's not going to work. We pushed, and they kept saying no. So she waited a year to start kindergarten. And I kind of resented that because I didn't realize that I could teach my kids myself at that point. She waited a year. She kind of lost interest in learning. And she was a lot older than the rest of the kids and lost interest, but I mean, that's there or then. We moved to DC and we were excited to be a part of the school system. The test scores were 97, 98 percentile. We were moving to Loudoun County, Virginia, one of the best school districts in the state. And my daughter was struggling with her reading. She just couldn't get the reading portion of schooling. So she was in a reading resource class. She was going to reading resource a couple times a week. Just so happened that during that couple times a week that she was in that class was also the same exact time that they were having history. She would come in at the end of the history lesson after the lecture was over. This was 4th grade. The teacher would say, McKenna, get the notes from the person next door. She would get a piece of paper and she would fill in the answers. They had quizzes every single Friday. And she was coming home with D's and F's on every one of those quizzes. It didn't matter how much I went over that piece of paper with her, she just wasn't getting it. And so I kept telling her to bring home her history book so that we could go over it. She kept forgetting. She said we never use it. I didn't believe her. Finally went to school, talked to the teacher, said I'm here for the history book. And he said, but we don't use the history book. And so the teacher said, we don't use the history book. And I said, well, what do you mean? How are you doing it? He goes, it's all based on my lecture. We don't use the book because out of 20 pages, they may only be required to learn the information by law in 2 of those pages. So it's just a waste. We don't use the book. And my jaw dropped, and I said, then how is my daughter supposed to learn? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, she's in reading resource at the same time you're doing the history. Well, she's getting the notes from the people next door, her neighbors. And I said, they don't like to give her the notes because they think that she's cheating. And he finally went, oh. And I said, so all of the kids are now seeing big red F's on her paper. And how do you think her self-esteem is doing to see those F's? The kids are making fun of her. She's feeling like a failure and she's not learning. That was when I had it. And that's when I pulled my kids. My daughter was in 4th grade at the time, and my son was in 1st grade. He was having some issues with some, what is it called? Sensory disorder. He was being tested in the school district. They knew that something was wrong, but because my son was quiet and wasn't making any noise, wasn't doing a ruckus, they didn't mind. He was coming home with worksheets that he was supposed to be doing in class and then coming home with homework. We were doing 3 hours of homework every night with my son because we were doing the in-class work. When I talked to the teacher, she said, don't have him do the in-class work, just have him do the homework. And I said, well, then how is he supposed to learn if all the kids need to be doing the in-class and then he's struggling on the homework? How is this working? And it was because the teacher never knew that he wasn't doing his work in class because he was quiet. He was falling through the cracks. It was the kids that weren't good that were talking out that they put more of the effort into. He would fixate on an object and just stare at it. He was found, the whole class went to lunch. Teacher realized one of the kids was missing. My son was still in the dark in a room looking at a clock for 10 minutes. Until she put her hand on his shoulder, did he even react to her? So he was just falling through the cracks. And after those two things, I said, we're done. I can do this. If I'm doing 3 hours of homework every night, I can put forth maybe another hour and do it at home and not have to worry about it. So we started homeschooling in Virginia. We did it for 1 year there, and then we moved here to Rhode Island and been homeschooling for about 3 years.
How's it been going?
Good. My son excels in math, and my daughter struggles with math. She just can't do it. But my daughter, well, I have 3 now. McKenna is 8th grade. She is lucky to also participate in the West Warwick Middle School basketball team and also the track team. The school district has been very good with that. We really appreciate that they can take part in those sports. She, language arts and literature, she really enjoys. She's writing her own books, and she's an amazing artist. My son does not like to write, not even his name, but he likes to read, and he'll stay up all night reading, and he's excellent at math. So we're just helping to accentuate the different strengths and weaknesses of the kids. My son is very into science and mechanics and figuring out how things go in astronomy, and my daughter's really into weather. We like to really push for their different things. And then I have a 1st grader, and she just wants to read all day long. She'll be my reader. So it's going really well. My grandmother was a teacher in the LA, California, Los Angeles Unified School District. She was a phenomenal teacher, still has students that contact her every Christmas and come to all of her parties, and she is 91 years old. She is not a fan of homeschooling because when she was a teacher, the teachers taught. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but she had full license to do pretty much whatever was needed to help her children to learn, to help her students learn. She had a team teacher. My grandmother was really into the history, and the other was into more of the language arts. And they would get together and do projects that would help the kids just to excel. Some of her students, you would know because they're on TV quite a bit, are now lawyers and doctors and scientists, and they're just phenomenal. But she had a great system where she could teach how she wanted to teach, and she could help the kids in whatever way those kids needed. Teachers don't have that ability nowadays. I grew up where there were 36 to 41 kids to one teacher in our classrooms. That's not acceptable. It was pretty high. It was about 30 in Virginia as well. How is one teacher supposed to give the individual attention to those kids? The answer is they can't. My son is a prime example of that. Because he was quiet, he fell through the cracks. He was not obnoxious, he was not loud, he was quiet, he was obedient, and the teacher didn't want to have to deal with him because she had too many other kids to deal with. And they don't have the license to be creative and to teach in fun and exciting ways. It's that teacher in Virginia, the 4th grade teacher, we are only required to teach what's by law. By law, these kids need to know this information in order to score well on the test, and we only have time to teach them that. We don't have time to teach them anything else. And what they teach in this classroom is exactly on the same day what they're teaching in the classroom next door. One size doesn't fit all in our educational system, and we're seeing it by the test scores. I think teachers need to be allowed to be teachers again. And don't worry about the test scores. Just teach. Find out what the kids want to learn and teach them. Give them the opportunity to learn. And don't be so afraid. Don't be so PC.
Instead of having them all separated by age, allowing them to excel at their own pace. And,
Yeah.
You know, and go as far as they can, as fast as they can.
No, I agree with that. But I think kids also need to be kids. And sometimes when you are putting too much pressure on the kids to excel too much, they still need to have, and I'm okay with letting them excel, but they still need to have the opportunity to go play kickball with the kids their own age. And what happened to recess? I remember having 3 recesses every single day plus PE. Where is recess? When are the kids allowed to go out and play? Why are kids marched into the dining hall and they have to sit wherever they are in line with their classmates and they can't go and do anything else? They have to be quiet, they can't talk, they can't be loud. They have 20 minutes to eat their food and then they're done and they can go outside for 10 minutes. When are kids supposed to be kids? And why is there so much homework? If you have my kid for 8 hours a day, you should not be sending them home to do 2 more hours of homework at night. When are kids supposed to go out and kick a can in the dirt lot next door to the house? When are they supposed to play kickball and soccer and take piano lessons and just learn to use their imagination and to be kids? The most important thing to have a well-rounded child, to have a well-rounded society, is to have people able to be raised in a natural, the way nature has made it. Get rid of the electronics and let kids be kids. Let kids be kids at school.
Awesome.
In my household, kindergarten and first grade is all about using your imagination and creating life. Creating imaginary friends and imaginary worlds and just learning how to be creative. Nowadays, there's not the opportunity for kids to create in school. How often are they using pudding to make a finger painting in school? Do they even do that nowadays? We do it all the time at my house. If my daughter wants to spend the day painting, do you know how many paintings I have all over the house? She's in first grade, and yet my dining room table is full of paintings some days, of just one right after another. How are we to be creative in our adult life and learn and come up with new and exciting things if we don't know how to create, if we don't know how to use our imagination? It's not something that can be taught out of a book. It's something that has to come from within and be nurtured and to be explored.